very warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for joining us at this special program I brought to you by Shelter Incorporated, and is of course still extending our discussions on all things that to do with the real estate. Today in studio I'm joined again by Mr. Lawrence Erimaya from Oasis Real Estate, and the last time we spoke we were touching on a few issues that to do with opportunities that come up within the real estate sector, but more importantly also some of the effects and challenges that came up during the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Erimaya, thank you so much once again, and looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you so much.
Now, the real estate sector is a very exciting space for one to find themselves in. Looking at first-time investors, early adopters, someone who's managed to find themselves carrying $20,000, $30,000. Not too sure how best to be able to position that. What advice would you give to someone, especially with regards to real estate?
I think for Zimbabwe, it's if you notice most of the transactions also that have actually been happening, our observation is that most people prefer buying stands compared to buying finished products. Mm-hmm. So you find most people buy a piece of land like from Shelter, a 200 square meter. It's always, if you're a first-time buyer, yes, I know most people want to go to, Harare North. They don't want to stay in the ghetto. But I think if you're a first-time buyer, you've got to weigh your options and say, where can I start? Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong by buying a residential stand in the high-density suburb, and then you scale up going forward, because you buy a piece of land, you pay on terms. I believe even Shelter Zimbabwe offers payment terms. You pay it perhaps over a year, 2 years. From then you finished paying for your stand. Then the next move now is to go on construction. Mm-hmm. With some stands, especially if it has a certificate of what we call a certificate of compliance, it means that stand is now ready for someone to get their title deeds. So if you now have a title deed, if you don't have money to construct or to do the project from start to completion at the same time, you can approach a bank and then you can apply for constructed project financing. Right. But you can also decide to say maybe you've done some savings, and then you just, obviously the first thing that you have to do is to get an architect who will draw up a good plan for you that suits your requirements. I've observed one thing: the ghettos, actually I don't want to call them ghettos, the high density stands that we see, or houses that we see today, are different from the high density stands that we used to see 10-20 years ago. Because
what would you think contributed towards that?
People right now, they no longer care to say, how much am I going to sell it for, and so forth. People want to be comfortable wherever they are. Yeah. So if you go to, I grew up in Kwazana, and when I got in real estate, interestingly, I used to say, because you get some insights, because one thing I discovered is that it's difficult for you to get to a certain price, or each and every suburb has got some ceiling values. And that's what was in my mind. But the market really has been showing me different things. People right now, when they are building to say, this is my home. If I go to Borodale one day, fair and fine. But if I've got my piece of land, whether in Kwazana or wherever I found the piece of land, in Rua or wherever, I have got to be making my family to be as comfortable as possible. Right? So they make sure they build something very nice. Some of the houses actually that you see being built today in the high density suburbs, if you compare with some of the houses that we sell even in the northern suburbs, you will say it's better. You are better off living in that high density suburb. I mean, that's just it's been my observation. I said, wow, if you get in the bathrooms, newly built modern finishes, everything. People are comfortable. They're no longer building to say, I choose, we will do, they want to be comfortable, right? So that's been the observation, and I think it's a good thing. And also, I've actually seen that the property prices in the high density suburbs, they have been firming, even from a rental perspective.
Right.
Because I think right now you'll find rentals in the high density suburbs as far as 350, 450. So if you look at it, a high density suburb actually is very good investment property. It's actually, if you look at what we call yields,
right, as compared
to return on investment for high density suburb. High density suburb will give you more than 10% versus what your low density suburb, where you are spending maybe your 400,000 versus a property where you probably spend 40,000, 50,000. You are getting your 10% yield versus a 5%, some 4%.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up percentages, because now we can get to the crux of our discussion before we wrap up. There are certain terminologies that are used within the real estate space: buyer's market, seller's market. What does that mean? But more importantly, how can the average person make sense of what that means to benefit them?
Right. When we say it's a buyer's market, we mean that the buyers are more in control. We mean that the supply for properties that are on the market is higher than the demand. And when it's a seller's market, it means the sellers are the ones who are smiling all the way to the bank, because there's more demand versus supply. I don't know if I've made it a bit simpler.
That's as simple. So now that we know what the difference is, how can a first-time investor within real estate approach that basic understanding of what it is to have a seller's market and what it is to have a buyer's market?
Right. If you are if you are a buyer and you want to acquire a new property, when you hear us saying that it is now buyer's market, that's the time to get in the market and make an acquisition.
Right.
And when we say it is now seller's market, it's the best time for disposal. If you want to dispose and then move on to the next, scale up to the next level.
Brilliant. And then now let's get to where it all comes together.
Yes.
How do you know when the market has shifted?
Right. If in the other conversation that we had, I'm sure you probably heard me talking about issues to do with financing. Banks are not lending. If you happen to have money during that time, that's the time to get in the markets and acquire yourself a property, because not many people during that time
have been given money,
have got the money to buy a property. So it's a buyer's market. And so when it is a seller's market, as I said earlier, you are thinking of moving now from your high density suburb. You want to perhaps to go to the medium density or low density, and you've got a bit of money. That is the best time for you to sell your property, because you're going to sell it at a good price, and then you move on to buy something that you have. But obviously you should have gone on the market and also, because usually when you say it's a buyer's market or a seller's market, it depends, because sometimes we say it is an umbrella term.
Yes.
Yet it's a buyer's market, but for a certain segment of the market. Because I think one thing that most people don't quite
like, for instance,
appreciate.
Would we, if I was to give an example that maybe our audience can appreciate, once again, as we're wrapping up this discussion, we've seen that there are a lot of cluster homes within residential areas. So it could be fair to say that right now what's happening is that, well, what happened was that a lot of homes were sold. Because there was buying that was taking place. So then it was a seller's market at some point for that. Right. And then in being able to see it happen, it doesn't mean it happened then. This happened a long time ago. But we're now seeing the results of a time when houses were sold and now they've got developers on them setting up cluster homes. Right. Okay. In conclusion, maybe you can wrap up by giving a final appreciation to our audience, and just in terms of how best they can continue to appreciate the state of real estate within Zimbabwe, but more importantly, confidence within the sector.
Okay, thank you so much once again. Real estate has proven itself, as you said earlier, has proven itself to be a good hedge against inflation. In fact, you find, like at the moment, there's no money market to talk about. There's no stock market really has not been performing. And you find even most pension funds, banks and so forth, they've put their money in real estate because people have been banned so many times, but with real estate, it has proven that it can hold value. It can hold both from a capital appreciation point of view and also from an income point of view, because when you've got a real estate, you get rent at the end of the month.
That's it.
So I think I've gone a bit off tangent, but I just want you to recap the question again.
In conclusion, how you believe that confidence can be still found within the real estate space?
I've discovered that with most people, the confidence is already there. With real estate, I think it's not because everyone wants to own a piece of land.
That's it.
And everyone wants to have a home where they can go to, and even if things go wrong, you still need shelter. You need a roof under your head. So it's not something that well, I don't know if there are people out there who need to be convinced, but I think all over the world, it's not just a Zimbabwean scenario. Everywhere in the world, like, I mean, if you look at other countries, every 10 years, some properties, they gain in value twice the value that it was 10 years ago.
That's it. So
and so you can never go wrong with real estate. And even from a risky point of view, your risk is low.
That's it.
Yeah.
No, Mr. Demai, thank you so much for your time, and we definitely look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gwas.
That's it. I was speaking there to Mr. Lawrence Demai of Oasis Real Estate, of course, sharing with us brief insights in terms of the space of real estate. Please keep sending us your questions, comments, and your contributions. We always do appreciate hearing from you. That's it for now. Pleasant viewing.